Hello everybody, I'm Steven here. I know it's been 2 weeks since the last video. Um, what did I do since then? I flew down to South Island to just pick up a new car. And then regarding my project, I've been reading a lot um, about the context and theory that I want to use, but also about how to write the thesis, or at least start writing it. So I just got a few books from the library, and today I just want to show you what I've been up to. First, let's talk about the calendar. And so right now I had my first crit already on the 25th of March, and now we around here, 6th of May, and the next crit is gonna be in about a month. And so yeah, the document that I have to submit should be in October, so I still got some times, but then I also have to think about continuing the design aspect of the project. So that's where I'm at the moment. At uni, they give us a template that we can follow to write our thesis. At the beginning, even though I did that for my proposal, I still wasn't sure about the stuff that I need to put into and what they meant to be doing. So after reading and doing a lot of brainstorming on paper, that's what I came up with. So the background will be, oops, maybe not this one. So I wanted to talk about the cultural memory and how people were memorizing things depending on the experience and the context. And then there's going to be a section about how to memorialize stuff. So talking about my precedents, like memorial museums, and maybe also how the memory works. And they had another one about the where's 2.3? It's not here, but post-colonial spaces. So in here, I was talking about critical regionalism, all the things that you see here. And then I have one about spatial storytelling. But while I was doing this, and while I was rereading it, I felt that it wasn't flowing properly. Like I was already thinking about when I'm gonna present it to people on my next crit. If starting by cultural memory, this, and then talking about post-colonial spaces, would it flow correctly? And would this be necessary there? So this morning, while I was in my coffee, I did little sketches. You can't see anything, but and I kind of changed it a little bit. So I thought in the first part I was going to talk about post-colonial spaces in the Pacific, and in this one I was gonna introduce the discourse, the post-colonial discourse, and oops, spelling mistakes. And this one was about referring to Michel Foucault's definition of discourse, and yeah. So yeah, post-colonial discourse, and then I was gonna talk about positionality, talking about the way that depending on which context you're from, you'll understand post-colonial in different ways. And then I was gonna talk about spaces. So like post-colonial discourse is more about like a setting up statement. Let's say that the Western people are superior to the Polynesian. So that would be a statement. That's not my opinion, but that's a statement that's been used during colonial time to give them reason to go and colonize Polynesia. So because of that statement, it kind of changed how people in Polynesia, after being colonized, were acting. So it created some type of spaces. So so that's how I could link the discourse here to the spaces. And so that would flow into this idea of memory, because now this is in the past. How do you make people remember what happened during the different eras, different time of history in Tahiti? Oh, I'm all over the place because I just worked on that this morning and still not sure how I'm gonna go about it. I'll try to make a better version when I'm done. But yeah, for the memory, I was gonna talk about the nature of memory and how it is transferred and recalled, and also its purpose. Then I was going to talk again about positionality and kind of talk about how, depending on who you are and your experience, you will kind of remember things differently. And then I was gonna go back to the site of memory. So here I added as two different things, but then I think that projection of space should be going here. And then the third background context would be about Tahiti. And on this one, that's where I headed here. So it's going to be about the geography and climate. So this is about talking about the natural environment. And then I was going to here historical context. But I think it was more relevant if we talk it about the social spaces specific to Tahiti, how the French colonialism impacted the life of Tahitian, and how, let's say, the new materials, tools that was brought during the first encounter with European, and then when religion came, and how it changed the relationship that Tahitian had with their gods. And then when the French arrived and the colonial period started, and finally the spaces that were created following the implementation of the nuclear testing, I mean the center of experimentation. So I would talk about history, but more focus on the spaces that they created. So such spaces during the different times. And then the last part will be a more in-depth study on the nuclear testing in the Pacific. So here I will talk a bit more about the islands like Mororoa and Fongatofa, how the nuclear testing affected the cultures, the economy, and the social life of Tahitian, and then maybe more about the nuclear testing itself, like the technology and how it impacted the environment, and also the consequences of the testing. So those three will be the main background information that I need to do my own research. One thing that I didn't understand at the beginning of this project is what are the new things that I have to find out, and how I can relate this new information to my project that I want to design. Because I mean, in the beginning I already knew that I want to do like a memorial museum, but then how do I link my memorial museum to my research? And then that's why it was important to start with the theory of post-colonial here, because it provided me like a way of looking at things, and like this positionality concept, and understanding that like those statements created a space, and that space is kind of the background of the social life of Tahitian at that time. Because for me, like if you see in my previous video, the concept I wanted to show like the spaces that was created with the arrival of each each turning points, like the first European evangelization, the French, and then if you I don't have it here, but it created spaces, but I didn't know how I could represent those spaces, materialize them, because I didn't know what created those spaces. But then if I use the theory of specialization by Henri Lefebvre, who what do you say? It says the spaces are created by the people and what they think, and if we follow Michel Foucault theory on the discourse and post-colonial studies, we would know that the European kind of impose their way of thinking on the Polynesian, and the knowledge has been changed, and from that like their way of living, their social life has been changed. So if I can find out how the European created those space, or what statement they've put in place to create those space, I will be able to use that to create the architecture that will reflect those spaces. I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, that's what this stage is about. Is about putting words on paper, on the computer, and then trying to find words or title that would help you kind of structure your thinking, and then you would see if they flow together. But yeah, so the goal of this is to find out what statement were imposed on the Polynesian, and what type of spaces was materialized from those statements. And okay, and so that's like the theory. Then I will use this theory to apply it to Tahiti, and that's gonna be part of my research. I will look into maybe photos, text, videos of Tahiti during the different times, and see if I can pick up how, let's say, religion was materialized in the space of that time. I could think of maybe the constructions of new churches. There'll be a contrast between the Mare, like the original, the Polynesian space where the discussion of relationship with the gods, and now they switch to a church which is made of concrete and had a different typology. So that church would be representations of that time, and I think that when people see it, they might be remembering the arrival, or maybe not the arrival, but they will remember religion, I guess. So what's important is the statement and the space, type of space that's created. And then in these sections, what I want to learn from the text or precedent is how do you trigger remembrance? So what do you have to say or do or show to a person to make him remember something from the past? Show, say, do, and then maybe how can you use space as a way to make people recall past events. Yes, so this is maybe going to be answered by the nature of memory, and how can you use space to make people recall events, side of memory. So that's when I'm going to talk about the precedence and positionality. What do you... I think in positionality, I want to talk about this to show that people, because of the experience, will remember things differently. People will remember things differently depending on their context. So in Tahiti, there's um, there's like local Polynesian, Tahitian, and there's Chinese looking people like me. There's French, there's mix, and because even though we all live in Tahiti, we have different cultures, which is mixed with the Tahitian culture, but we do different stuff. We see different people. And because everybody is different in some way, um, so I might remember things differently. Like when I was doing my research about the nuclear testing, I I knew about it. I mean, I've read it in the news. I knew it was bad, um, but I didn't know anybody who went to work on the island. I didn't know anyone who was directly affected um, by the nuclear testing. So of course I wouldn't remember the event the same way. Um, so from that realizations, it became really difficult to design something that could represent all the stories. I mean, all the memories, because I don't know. I mean, I can only talk about myself. Um, and I think that's why I started thinking that, and instead of trying to tell people what happened, um, it was more about trying to make people realize that there's not only one truth, there's not only one memory, that everybody thinks differently, and we should understand that it's not because politicians say that um, there was no consequences or it was not harmful that it's the truth. I mean, clearly some people were affected by it, and they are looking for recognition. Um, but yeah, so maybe it's not about showing one thing, but designing a space that will take people, that will bring that past back to the people that lived it, and then maybe they can relive the event, think about what happened, and they can start to debate with other people who might have different memories. Because I think there's also this idea of like collective memory, and people say that the more people remember the same thing, the more chance of it to be true. Um, but then again, you might have like equivalent or number of people that remember different things. Doesn't mean they're wrong. They just see it with a different discourse, different opinions, and that's when you debate. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't just try to show one thing. So that's why it's important for me to just focusing on designing an architecture that help people remember their own memory. Because yeah, sometimes it's really hard to remember stuff. It just didn't stick. But yeah, remembering the events and maybe seeing how other people remember it might eventually change the way we remember as well. And I think there was a good movie about that topic. There was this Japanese movie called Rashomon who was talking about the murder of one man, and there was like four people retelling their stories about that event, about that murder, and everybody had different facts or was retelling the story a bit differently. And then what was interesting is that the way it was filmed, it was as if the people were talking to me, and then I could see that everyone has their own ideas and own views on the murder. But I also realized that depending on who was telling the story, it's like either the bandy, like the bad guy, or like the wife of the person that was murdered, or like I think there was a priest, and there was also like the woodcutter, the guy that found the dead body. Depending on how they look and maybe how they tell the stories, it would kind of affect how I would perceive their message. Uh, so I mean, this exercise, I mean, was serving like two purpose. One, to kind of recall the event, and then when you see other information or other ways of recalling that memory, it might tell a bit more about yourself. Um, Still not really clear how I want to talk about this. But yeah, so this will help me kind of find devices that I can use to make people remember. So for my design methods, so those are like the backgrounds, and then you have to think about design methods. So how am I gonna go about designing that memorial? I think that's when I can use spatial storytelling. In here I wanted to use the different space as a way to take people through the journey of the Tahitian, following the encounter with the European, and I was looking at how the cinema, like the other cinema, was using composition, textures, sounds, and dialogues to kind of tell the story. So storytelling using cinema techniques. So I wanted to know if I could bring those techniques that they use in film and apply it to my architecture, to kind of tell a story. And then I hear it phenomenology, multisensory, but I guess this is part of the elements that I can use to create that story. I guess this one is about creating images, and then phenomenology and multisensory. would be about creating a scene. So it'll be about like light, views, scale, and then I was gonna use also. Well, I was interested in doing critical regionalism because at the beginning I thought that's um, what we use to create a sense of place by using materials or like symbols of um, that I use in Tahiti to kind of make you feel like, okay, I'm in Tahiti. But then I would need to also use elements that mark a sense of time, not just a sense of place. So aims to show a sense of place, but also time. And what can I use again? So I guess in this part, wait, space storytelling. So I study this, and then you would give me some techniques, and then I have to apply it to that. So I would look into text, videos, and images of different times, different periods of Tahiti's history, and then I'll try to define the structure, the social structure of each time, space of Tahiti. And then I'll try to use the techniques here to see if I can recreate that space or like the essence of that space. Cinema and techniques, cinema and regional techniques to recreate that space. In order to create the background where I could then place memories to create the background where I could place memories, and those memories still don't know how I'm gonna show them. I mean, in most museum and like other precedent that I've seen is usually like text, videos, or maybe artifacts, like maybe like costumes and tools and stuff like that that would kind of make you remember that time. But I think it's also important to show it how those elements were used, just to try to get some animation into it. I always find that just a display of object was hard to put them into context and understand what they were used for, and by who. Um, okay. Well, I guess that's where I'm at the moment. I'm still really thinking about how to go about it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say today. I'm sorry if it wasn't really helpful in helping you write your thesis. I guess right now I'm just trying to say it out loud, just to kind of help me structure my own thoughts. Or maybe I'll do show you something that I use. When you're gonna start to do your research, I'm sure you have done that already. You might have a lot of reference. That some of the reference that I have, as you can see, there's heaps, and I'm using Mendeley. Let me see, Mendeley. Oops, Mendeley. So that's this app. It's like a reference management tool, and you just download this, and this. This is to able to get that little icon, so that when you go on internet, you find a PDF, instead of using bookmark, you can just use that, and it will save the link and also the PDF. This one is to be used with Microsoft Word here, and you will have those things here that will allow you to link your Word document to the Mendeley software. So here you could either manually add a book or one of the resources, but I'm quite lazy, and I always like to find some easier and faster way to do it. So I'll just show you my workflow. So I'm using the Unitic library. That's the one that we're using in my uni in New Zealand. And let's say you're gonna take a book about cultural memory. Let's say this one, for example. So here, what's important is this. So you export this, you click this, and you can download. You're gonna get a little file. You double click on this, and normally in Mendeley, it's already running. Don't activate it. Okay. So it's here. I've double clicked it. It just now it's in the list. And by just downloading that file, I would have all the information. I mean, somebody has already done that work, so you're not gonna redo it. So you get the abstract, the links, the publisher, and everything. So now it's there. And let's say I go back to my Word document and I type cultural memory or whatever paraphrasing you're gonna do, and now you can insert citation. Click that, and if you remember, I think it was cultural memory, and now it's in here. I think. Wait, which one did we have? Oops, my Mendeley. So meditation, remediation, dynamics of cultural memory. Oops. Delete that. Cultural memory. And so that was this one. Press OK. OK. And now you get number one. And it's going to format the citation for you. you have to make sure that here it's in Chicago style. And I think you also need to check on your Mendeley. Where's the option? I think there's somewhere around here that you need to make sure that it's well, I guess you just have to do it in here. You have to make sure, yeah, it's in here. You just have to make sure it's this one, Chicago style 17 full note, or whatever citation style you need to choose. And now it's here. You can do that for anything else. So let's say hello, and I'm just gonna add another one. Let's say architecture. This one, press OK. It's got number 2 and it's here. And let's say I delete that. It will delete the citation as well. And let's say I copy this, well, I cut it and I put it here. It will automatically change number and put the citation. It's really good to kind of manage all your citation and easily put them in, because I can never remember the order of name, last name, first name, if it needs to be in italic and stuff like that. I can never remember. And then at the end you could also have a bibliography, and everything is automatic. You just have to click here, insert bibliography, and it will do it automatically for you and all formatted correctly. Okay, well, that's it for today. Hopefully in the future I'll try to make video that's more compact, and that'll be more kind of refined. But yeah, I mean, this video is just about me trying to talk it out. Like, hopefully I'll as well feel that if I try to explain somebody else my project, they'll eventually understand it better myself. Yeah, because that's one thing, when in your last year everybody tend to just work from home, and we meet like once a week at uni to the class, but don't really spend much time talking to each other, or even talking about our project. I guess that's something that I like to do more, and because talking with other people and asking questions about their project might also help you understand yours better. But yeah, that's it for today. Bye bye. Oops, where's the